Happy August, everybody, and as we approach the end of the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the end of the winter, approaching the end of the winter, I believe it is in the Southern Hemisphere, it's a travel season, right? It's a time of year when a lot of people do some traveling or go out and about. So for this assignment, it's going to be street, travel, or candid photography. For this assignment, get outside and take photos when people are unaware of it, within the limits of local laws, of course. Travel for this or don't. You can do this assignment anywhere that people are. This assignment aims to teach you to have the courage to photograph things in the real world and the reflexes that you need to do it quickly. If people don't want to be photographed, be respectful and put the camera down, okay? So if you're out there and somebody does this or this or whatever, signals that they don't want their photo taken, don't take their photo. Be respectful. Don't photograph things you're not allowed to. For instance, some countries ban the photography of government buildings. So if you are traveling for this, make sure that you're familiar with local laws and regulations about what can and can't be photographed, and don't photograph things that will get you in trouble. Be safe, be legal, but also be brave. Okay, so I'm going to give you some pointers on this. Travel photography is kind of a catch-all. Okay, it's sort of related to event photography. The goal of travel photography is to record a travel, but also convey a sense of it, right? So if you think of this like photographing that wedding or that barbecue, you're going to photograph the things that you see, but you're going to do so in a way that when you go back and you show your friends your photos of that travel, that they'll have a sense of what it was like to be there, okay? We're going to come back to street last. I know I listed it first. Candid photography can be done really easily if you have a quiet camera. For those of you like me who really enjoy using a Bronica S2A, the camera with the loudest shutter ever made, this is not your time to use that camera, okay? The way that I do candid photography, and the way that I do most of my street photography, by the way, because these are very, very related for me, I'll grab my Sony a7 IV. I'll set the shutter on silent mode, make sure that the autofocus is set to focus on people's faces, and then I'll actually use a wide aperture for a shallow depth of field. Right now I'm using f1.8 on a 55mm lens, something maybe a hair deeper than that, going down to about f2.8 usually. I'll set that lets me use a slightly slower ISO and still have a shutter speed that's in the 800 to 1600 of a second range. And then I have a little bubble level that goes in the hot shoe. So I know, and what I'll do is I'll kind of calibrate my arms every time we're out walking. What is level? What is level? Okay. So I'll know by looking at the bubble level what level feels like. And then I'll just do that every half hour or an hour. Just verify that I'm still holding it level. Keep my hand on the shutter as I'm walking along. Make eye contact with the person if I can and take their photo. Because if I know someone's looking at me, I know they're not looking at my finger on the camera. That's a really good way to do candid street photography. And downside, unless you're holding your camera like this, which does look a little bit weird, your photos will generally be landscape orientation, but just plan that in how you're going to shoot. That's a really good way to take care of the candid and the street photography. With candid, you're going to try to be discreet as you're out photographing people. You don't have to be on the street to do this, by the way. You can do candid photos when you're hanging out with friends. You're at dinner. Your drinks have arrived before your meal does, and you want to take a couple photos of them with your camera just resting on the counter, or on the table rather, right? It's low light. Your exposure is going to be a half second or a quarter second, but if you have it sitting on that table, you can do that. And you can kind of set your hand under the lens and you're talking to them, trust the autofocus, take a handful of photos, maybe tilt the camera slightly differently as you do that a few times, and maybe one of those photos will turn out. If you're shooting digital, you can take 50 or 80 or 100 photos, and if one turns out, highlight the rest, hit delete, doesn't hurt anything, okay? For film users, a really good type of camera to use for this, if you have one at your disposal, is a rangefinder. Rangefinders, generally speaking, had leaf shutters. Very quiet. It's a different technique with film. What you'll do is grab the fastest film you can, preferably a black and white in the something like a Tri-X that's been pushed to 1600. Okay? And the reason that you want to do this is you want to set your rangefinder to f11 or preferably f16. And then set your shutter speed to the fastest speed, and then just trust that the film's latitude is going to do the rest of the work for you. Now what you know is that you've got your aperture at f16, you set your lens to the hyperfocal distance. If you haven't seen my video on how to do zone focusing and hyperfocal distance setting on a lens, after this video, check that out. Just search David Hancock, zone focus, hyperfocal, something like that. It'll turn up, and that will teach you how to read the scales on your lens to set a hyperfocal distance. So you're going to do that. Then you can hold the camera in your hands like this. Inconspicuous. You see, you're walking along, you see something interesting, click. Leaf shutters are almost silent. High-speed film like a 1600 ISO, 1/500th of a second at f16. In most lighting conditions, at least outside, even if you're in the shade, it's going to be just fine. So that's a way to do it for those of you who want to shoot film. That's the assignment. If you're going to travel, you don't have to do candid or street photography, by the way, right? These are all just sort of somewhat related techniques that teach you the purpose of this assignment is to teach you to tell a story about a thing that you see or a place you have been with your camera. Kind of a theme this year, I guess, is using your photos to tell stories, right? That's the point of this assignment, and those are some techniques you can use to accomplish it. So, as you complete these, as you post photos, if you post them to Instagram, give me an @. If you post them to Imgur, where I'm more likely to see them more quickly, give me an @ there as well. I really look forward to seeing the work that you guys do for this assignment, and I will see you in September.